Hello, my dear friend, and welcome to the Project of Love. So we are in Huntington Beach, near the pier on the main street. It's a lovely July evening, and I'm very happy to be able to talk in person and not over Skype with a friend, because I think I can already call him a friend, Vishnu from Vishnu's Virtues.
Thanks, AG. I'm very glad to be here. It is one of the most beautiful places in the world.
Let's introduce the book. So, The 7 Sacred Promises.
Yeah.
A practical guide for living with meaning and purpose.
Yeah. I've written a couple of books before, ebooks, but I don't think I've spent as much time and energy, and I've not printed a book out myself. It's still self-published. But yeah, I feel like it's a book that kind of covers the last few years of my life.
7 Sacred Promises.
Yeah.
I want you to tell us a bit about each promise.
I want to start by talking about why I use the concept of promise, right? So here's what I've noticed. Society gives us a lot of promises in life. Society promises us, if you do this, you get that. If you go to school, you'll get a job. If you go to a professional school, you'll get a better job. If you get married, you'll be happy. So we hear all of these, what I call lies that society tells us. You know, we think they're promises. We do one thing and get something else in return. I call the first chapter false promises. And I say that there's 2 reasons why society does this. One, society creates all these false promises because there are so many industries that are based around us doing the things that society wants us to do. Right? So if we went to school, there's a whole bunch of universities that are making a lot of money by us doing this. There's a lot of industries and a lot of money to be made from the housing market. So from each areas of these of our lives, I've noticed that society makes these false promises with us. And society doesn't want us to follow what's internal and within us. It makes all these external promises to us.
It pushes us to look for happiness and fulfillment outside of us when in fact everything is within us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what I say is these are all false promises, and I'm going to come up with 7 sacred promises, and the sacred promises are internal promises.
I know your story, and you were a successful lawyer with a beautiful marriage and a beautiful house. You embodied the American dream, and yet at some point you decided to say, okay, stop.
I'm not sure if I'm the one who said stop. I think life sort of said stop. I was on that path, and I come from an Indian family. It's a culture that really is society based, and everyone is pushing you to do one thing. And I really came through and followed through with all those things that society wanted me to do. I went to a good school. I studied hard. I went to law school. I practiced law. I had a good salary. I bought a house. I got married. My wife, which is my ex-wife now, is a doctor. So you have a doctor and a lawyer, which in the Indian
this is like
in the Indian culture, this is like the perfect family. So you sort of had this perfect life that I had for several years. I had thought that this is what it's supposed to be about. I was living that life, and of course I was tired, I was stressed out, I wasn't very happy, and as all of these things in my life started to fall apart, that's when I realized, oh, all these promises are not really true. They're kind of like false promises. I think I've been tricked. Why do I have all these things but I'm not very happy? I was able to find this out, at my 30s. I think other people may never find that out, because if you buy into all of these societal promises and things go well in your life, you can continue your whole life with all of these promises, think that this is what you're supposed to be doing, and then find out towards the end of your life, at the very end, you're like, oh my God, it was all a lie. There's a very planned life that society wants you to have. From the day you're born to the day you die, society kind of tells you what you're supposed to be doing. So I wrote this book to say that we should not be following society's rules and laws. There's a different set of laws, and it comes from within. What I've noticed is, and what I talk a lot in the book, is you can do whatever your internal compass, your heart tells you to do. You can make money in that, and it should come from within. What about things that really matter? Like, what about what you want to do? What about, when we grow up and when you go for your graduation and you hear all the speeches, people are talking about living your dreams, following your purpose. But it seems like all of that gets thrown out the door, and we opt for sort of this, society made life.
If we listen to our heart and to our intuition, we always know what's good for us
Yes.
and what's the path to follow.
Yes.
And even if that path at the beginning might be a bit bumpy or might be a bit difficult because you're not living in that big house anymore.
Right.
But I look at you and I see that your eyes are smiling.
Yeah.
So when a person smiles with the eyes, it means that that person is really happy.
Yeah.
So yeah, it may be a bit difficult at the beginning, but then it will pay off. Yeah.
And I think, exactly, courage is one of my promises too.
How did you discover your courage?
Courage, it's the third promise actually.
Okay.
And it says when you keep a promise to courage, life will guide you to your calling. It takes a lot of courage to do what you're going to do, to follow your calling in life. When I left the legal profession, that took a lot of courage because it was crazy. And I think for me, more than other people or like other people, the marriage ending for me was kind of like a life or death. I really thought like my life was over. So it almost felt like starting over from that point of, complete and utter loss. Courage is a practice. It's kind of like a habit. You have to take small steps. I didn't just jump straight out of the law. So there is some kind of risks that you take, but they're more calculated risks and you sort of plan to do that. So take small steps. Don't make huge leaps at one time, and also have a plan on how you can move forward. Going past that fear, sometimes it's sort of surrendering as well, because you don't know what the next step is, but you just move forward.
To be inspired to pluck up your courage and do things, the first promise and the first step is to know the truth about yourself.
Right. So the first promise is to know the truth, and it's to find out who you are. And I talk a lot about stop listening to other people, stop listening to society, stop listening to comparisons, and it's very hard to listen to yourself and to listen to your intuition. But those feelings that you get when you do something, and if you walk into a scary house or you go into a nice restaurant, you have a particular feeling, right? And what I'd say in this chapter about finding your truth is those feelings are very important. That's your intuition, that's your wisdom, and that's your guide. So I encourage you to, that little voice that you have inside, most of the time we ignore it.
That's true.
But that is so powerful. I think that's like a divine voice. We just need to listen to that voice more, and we need to follow that voice more. And it's that voice that will guide us to our purpose and our fulfillment and our calling.
I think that calling is very important in life, and I think each person is born with a gift. I refer to it as a gift. I think you refer to it as your art.
So I talk about the art, right? And you have an art within you. You know what it is, but someone will be listening thinking, I don't have an art. I don't have a skill. But it's those things that you will never think that it's your art, even though people have been telling you your whole life. For me, my entire life, people used to tell me like, oh, you're a really good writer. But never for a second did I think that was my art. So some people, you're like, oh, I can't write, I can't do anything, I can't do science, I can't study. But maybe you're really good at talking to people. That's an art. Maybe you're a very compassionate person. That's an art. Maybe you're a very creative person. That's an art. So what I say is, it's not about discovering it, it's about accepting it. And a lot of times...
I love it. I love it.
Yes. And a lot of times we don't, because of maybe even some self-worth issues or some confidence issues, we don't accept that we have this art, and we don't accept that we can pursue this art and do this art. So I encourage you in this chapter of how to figure out what your art is, figure out what your strength is, and find the courage to pursue that, which is basically what the third promise is about too.
2 days ago, so we were here on the pier,
right,
and we saw people chasing the Pokemons, and they could have used the time they had on their hands for their art.
Yes. And of course you brought us to the fourth promise. You're good. Someone will say like, okay, I have a dream, I have a calling, I have art,
I don't have the time.
Right, but I don't have the time. That's what everyone says.
We never have the time.
But the truth of the matter is, and AG, as you know, the truth of the matter is we make the time for what's important to us. The secret to time management and the secret to being effective comes down to habits. So what you do is you formalize your time and you do something on a regular basis, and that's how you get effective at getting closer to your life's dreams and purposes and goals. And creating habits is the way to not just keep your art in the background or hidden within you. You know, it allows you to do something every day. And that's the whole key, right, to habits. To do something very small every day consistently, right? Or if you want to become a writer, I'm going to write 100 words today. If you can keep that up for 30 days, you will go a lot further than writing a book, you know, having a goal of writing a book in like in 2 weeks or something, which you'll never do.
What habit did you build after you changed your lifestyle?
Oh my God, so many. So 1, for sure, a writing habit. 2, a meditation habit. And 3, a habit of prayer. And the thing is, of course, I didn't do all of them at one time. I just did one at a time. And probably the most consistent and the thing I've done the longest is the writing. Writing, meditation, prayer, all of that is helpful to following my art and pursuing my calling in life.
Another promise that I think is related to the second one, so the promise to your art, is the promise to your essence. So the seventh promise.
What I talk about in this book is how do you get to your true self? How do you get to the person that you are? How do you get to your spiritual self? And a lot of times in our life, people don't even think, and society doesn't think, that we even have a spiritual nature. But we do have a spiritual nature, and I think that's what I talk about in that 7th promise. And it's more about getting within yourself, getting quiet, discovering who you are, using, and I even say using tools like religion and spirituality, and challenging those assumptions that you have by, that you initially have. And I ask you to use all of these tools to get to the core of who you are. You have a spiritual nature. You have just forgotten about it because society doesn't want you to get to your spiritual nature.
Because that's where your power resides.
Exactly.
And if you get there, so you get your power back and you cannot be controlled or manipulated. And then you can get rich.
Exactly. Exactly. And you can live and you can have a lot of abundance in your life. So society is trying to hold you down. So it doesn't want you to act from a place of your spiritual nature.
No.
So if you've noticed over the years, yes, religion has had a lot of problems. In every religion, but what has happened with religion going out of fashion is basically people have lost their, religion was the one connection to spirituality, but today people have totally cut away from that, and so there's no time in the day that you're connected to spirituality. There's no time in the day where people value being by themselves, appreciating silence, meditating, to taking a walk, appreciating the beauty around them, because they don't see, there's no monetary value to that, right? It's not getting ahead in society. So people say, oh, forget about your essence. If you can get to that power, that's where the meaning and purpose really and truly lies.
To get to your essence, you need to be able to let go of beliefs, of conditioning. You can tell more about it.
Yeah.
Because this is another promise.
The promise of letting go. We have to let go of society's promises. We have to let go of the conditioning that we've had. We have to let go of all these things that come in the form of ego. We have to let go of the hurt that we're carrying around in our lives. We have to let go of the pain. We have to let go of the past. I think I go through about 20 or 25 different things on how to let go in life, right? And we have to let go of these things in order to get to our essence and get to our true nature. Otherwise, it's a heavy weight that we're carrying around, and it's preventing us from living our truth. So we take society's burdens, we take our own personal burdens, our own personal pains, but I encourage people to break through the pain, to break through our past, to break through the social conditioning, to start asking new questions and start letting go of the comparison trap, the trap of the past. And the first step to all of these things is to acknowledge that you are doing these things.
That they are there. Because the first step is to become aware and then decide to take steps.
Exactly. If you don't know that, if you don't know that you're living a lie, you're never going to do anything about it. If you don't know that your anger and your resentment at people who hurt you is holding you back, you're not going to do anything about it. So awareness is a key of...
The promise that I love the most, of course, and which is I think is the key solution to everything in our life, is a shift from living in fear to living from a place of love.
If you keep your promise to love, life will reward you with connection and joy. That's what that promise is about. And what is the myth or the false promise that I want to dispel? And this is one of society's biggest lies.
Okay.
Everything from is that kind of a romantic love, right? That you see in TV, that you see in the music videos, that you have dreamt about your entire life. I'm like, why is society trying to tell you that this is the ultimate love that there is, and that this is the most fulfilling love there is, a love with another person? I say that is a false promise. So the types of love that I talk about, one is cultivating self-love. How do you love yourself first and foremost? The other person is not completing you. The other person is not fulfilling you. But many of us are living our lives trying to move towards finding that love in our life, and that is a false promise by society. You're not going to find complete happiness and fulfillment in another person. You're going to find it in yourself. So spend the time cultivating love within. If you want to love someone deeply, intimately, romantically, and just give them all the love that you have in your heart, start with yourself. So what we're talking about here is not about selfishness or ego or fear. It's just about loving the person that you are, accepting who you are, being compassionate to yourself, and treating yourself like you would treat a child that you love. A lot of us have some issues of our self-worth and self-lack because the people who were supposed to have loved us
unconditionally.
Unconditionally, not having done that.
No.
So we begin to almost loathe ourselves, hate ourselves. We don't feel fulfilled. So it's to fill that void that we all have within with the love.
Yeah, because unless you learn to do this, you cannot do it for other people, and you will not accept it from other people.
The reason I think we suffer is because we have these images of what this love is supposed to be. This crazy, passionate, romantic love. We have these images that society has planted in our mind. So what I say is that's a false promise. And instead of that kind of a love, one, let's do self-love, and two, how about just being a loving person? How about showing up in the world as love? How about giving love to the people around you? How about sharing generosity, compassion, kindness? Be a loving person to the society around you, to the world around you. You don't have to be this, crazy, passionate, romantic lover to just one person. Why don't you just become love and become love to everyone around you? And believe it or not, if you love yourself and love everyone around you, that person will show up. So how do you start loving yourself first? So I think it's working on those things. And I think what we don't do is work on it on a regular basis, right? We might have spent a lifetime, and the people who loved us may have spent a lifetime not doing a very good job of loving us. So what I talk about in this chapter of self-love and cultivating love within is you have to create a relationship with yourself. So what would you do every day if you were in a relationship with someone? Do those same things with yourself. Okay, what would you want to do with the person that you loved most? Okay, so think about those things, and the process is do those things for yourself and incorporate those things every day into your life. What would you do today if this was the last day of your life? Those are some of the things that you can incorporate. I mean, if today was the last day of your life and you wanted to fully love yourself, what would you do? You'd go watch the sunset. You would walk on the water. You would go in and eat at a nice restaurant. You would read a favorite book. You would sleep early. You would get you would relax. You would call and speak to the people you care about. But usually we put those away until the weekend or until vacation time. And we say, only during my vacation time am I going to love myself. Essentially, what self-love is incorporating that into every day of your life. Doing the things that show that you love yourself on a daily basis. So there's a lot of little actions you can take, but it's almost turning it into the habit of love. What I would say to that, and people who think this book is far out there, the message would be this, that you have been conditioned so much, and society has been making you these false promises for however old you are. If you're 20, it's been telling you for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. If you're 60 years, society has been telling you how to live one way. You're not simply going to read this one book and make it all make sense overnight, right? You're going to, some of these things are going to be kind of eye-opening, and even if you read it and it kind of makes sense to you, you're like, okay, this is not practical. So what I would say is give it some time, think about it, and be just open to the idea that there's a different way of living, and be open to the idea that you might even be able to live that way. You don't have to go from working at a corporate job at Goldman Sachs one day to the next day living in a meditation retreat. You don't have to go to that extreme, but there are small steps that you can take every day in your life.
You can find the book on Amazon.com, 7 Sacred Promises by Vishnu of Vishnu's Virtues. And you should drop by the blog every once in a while.
I talk about, living your truth and healing from heartbreak and spirituality and all of the internal promises that I talk about in this book. I write a weekly blog post that people can check out at vishnusvirtues.com.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, AG. I really enjoyed this interview.